In this lesson, I want to introduce you to the unit circle. And honestly, this is probably the most foundational thing that you will learn in trig. It's something that we'll use in almost every single lesson. So in a seated class, this is something that we totally memorize. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing because later when we take assessments and quizzes, we'll be timing those, and you don't want to have to go back and look at something every single time because this is and honestly, we'll use it so much that you may just have it memorized on your own. But the unit circle has an equation of x squared plus y squared equals 1. And if you'll remember, the equation of any circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So since this is the case that we have nothing with the x and the h and the k represent the center, then the center of the unit circle is at 0, 0, the origin. And since this is equal to 1, that means that the unit circle has a radius of 1. So anywhere from the center to the edge of the circle is going to be 1 unit. So I know that at this place, I have an ordered pair of 1, 0. And at this place, I have an ordered pair of 0, 1. And here I have an ordered pair of negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. Because the radius is 1. So you can see then that this circle is drawn out by a series of points that when I square the x value and square the y value, I will always get 1. That's going to happen for any point on this circle. So, since the circle from left to right goes from negative 1 to 1, we would say that the domain, the values that we can put in for x, have to be between negative 1 and 1. There will be no x values on this circle that aren't between negative 1 and 1, including negative 1 and 1. Same thing happens for the range. Anything that I put in for x, the only values I can get for y, the range, is going to be from negative 1 to 1. So whatever we put in, these are the only values that can happen for x and y. The other thing I want to talk about is values for cosine, sine, and tangent. Anytime you're talking about the cosine of an angle, you can find the cosine value of that angle as the x coordinate of the ordered pair. And we'll talk about this more, and you're going to do a discovery lesson on how to find that. Sine of any angle, theta, is always going to be the y value. And since tangent is opposite over adjacent, and we'll discover this more, tangent of any angle is going to be y value over the x value. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but you'll want to have that in your notes. The other thing that we need to talk about then is since cosine is the x value, we want to talk about the signs in every quadrant. So for instance, in this quadrant, since cosine is the x value, x is always positive here. So cosine will always be positive in the first quadrant. And sine is the y value, and since y is positive in this quadrant, it'll be positive also. In the second quadrant, so this was the first quadrant, in the second quadrant, since you go to the left of the origin, cosine is going to be negative, but sine is still going to be positive because you would go up. In the third quadrant, cosine is going to be negative, and sine is going to be negative. And in the fourth quadrant, cosine now is to the right, the x value is positive, and sine is negative.